welcome all of you to this session of ETHR on being a creative, digital, and a considerate employer. What intrigued me in this whole topic was the word considerate. I think this is something that we as HR professionals may not have thought about if not for the pandemic. And I think it was probably very timely to introduce this concept of considerate employer in this particular time, and also more importantly, in terms of building organizations of the future. I have a very, very distinguished and a very, very eminent panel of speakers. And what is more interesting is the fact that they come from very, very diverse industries, which will give the audience a very, very interesting flavor of what is happening across the people front in various industries. And I think each industry has used this pandemic to kind of come up with different solutions because each one faced a very different set of challenges. I'm from the auto industry, and we probably have been facing one of the very, very difficult times in terms of business. Also, in terms of being a manufacturing organization, getting people to work, getting people to come to the shop floor, getting people to get engaged on the shop floor has been a very, very challenging task. And I think the HR team, especially the shop floor HR team, has done a yeoman job in terms of keeping the safety and the health protocols in place and looking at various means. I mean, I guess over a period of time, I've been speaking to the HR fraternity in the auto industry. And I recall companies like Hyundai, TVS, and Ashok Leyland, where I come from, actually hiring marriage halls and hiring smaller hostels and college hostels to accommodate people so that they are not getting back home or facing the quarantine restrictions in their respective places. So I think everyone and every industry has its own response mechanisms, and I think the opportunity for us to here share what we have done and how we have gone about in terms of addressing this pandemic, as well as preparing the organization going forward is. So today we have 4 questions ahead of us. And interestingly, the questions are also diverse in their own perspective. The first one being innovation. The premise is that creativity builds innovation, or creativity creates innovation, or creativity facilitates innovation. And in that context, how do we prepare our organizations to be creative? How do we get our people to be creative? How do we encourage a culture which promotes creativity? The second question is on technology change. The very fact that we are meeting virtually and we are fairly comfortable in this model of meeting virtually has shown that we have adapted to the new normal. We have adapted to what the new world is demanding. And resilient that we are, I think we have now accepted the new normal and preparing for the next new normal. And that in itself is what the essence of this whole session is about. And the third one is about empathetic leadership. And here I'd like to draw a small reference to our own experience. And we have always been talking about the 3 C's in our model, which is earlier capability, capacity, and culture. And we now relooked at those 3 C's, and we said we will have, we will start to look at collaboration, we will start to look at communication, and more importantly, we will look at compassion, because it is important for us to drive the message of compassion. And also one other thing which we said was, as an outcome of all this, everyone will start to look at the 4th C, which is the contribution, because we moved the needle from performance to contribution so that they have a sense of purpose in their delivery. And of course, the last question, which is a very, very puzzling question to all of us, and I'm sure we constantly keep learning this generational shift in the workforce. How do you manage Gen Z? And this one, I mean, in my career over the last 30 years has moved from X, Y, Z. I don't know where it's going to go and land itself to. And we are sure to find answers in our own way. And I think the best way is to learn from each other. So without much ado, I think let me go to the panelists. It is a wide range of topics. So let me attempt to at least pose questions based on the relevance, based on the experience, and then probably we will take it going forward. So let me pose the first question to Raj of Titan. How do you ensure, or how do you encourage, or how do you help the organization embrace creativity? Because you are in a very, very creative environment, especially in the retail space, and also more importantly, in the jewelry business of yours, which is all about design. So we'd love to hear from you, Raj.
Thanks, Bala. Thank you very much. So, looking at your question on culture of creativity and which leading to innovation, I think it's very, very relevant in these times, certainly. And I think it goes beyond just creating products which are uh, not just aspirational, but people would love to buy. But it's also about being creative as far as customer connect is concerned. It's also about being creative as far as different processes are concerned. And the realities of today's world in the retail sense are very, very different from what it was 7 months ago. And customers are coming in with a lot more knowledge about what they have, what they want to buy. And they come in to perhaps have a look and feel, but at the same time want to be in a safe environment. So what we did was we have a process within the organization which helps or which nudges people to be creative on a constant basis. But we said it's important for us to get a large part of our employee base to start thinking differently. And not just our own employees, but employees of our franchisees as well, right? So what we did was we hit upon something called, we have every year, we have something called a Kaizen Mela, which is a physical Kaizen Mela, right? And it happens in every region. And we have, you know, employees work looking at continuous improvement. Because if you look at the whole innovation curve, continuous improvement is at the base of it, right? This year we said we do it differently. We leverage technology. We ran something called a National Kaizen Mela, which had all employees participating in it, and specifically in retail, in watches, in jewelry, watches, all the brands, which is World of Titan, Fast Track, uh, Helios, Tanishq, Mia, uh, Titan I Plus, the including our subsidiary company like Carrot Lane, then our new baby on the block, Tanera, right? So we had people from all of these sales lines participating. And I'll tell you, when I went through many of these rooms and listened to people who put up their presentations, and then we had interactions with them, it was something else. When the completely goosebumpy experience for me personally and for our entire leadership team. The kind of creativity that came up and the kind of ideas that came up. And we're now looking at, we shortlisted, of course, the top, and we're looking at many of those being applied across the country. The power of that in getting us that, thrust forward is quite something else. And I think it's important to build that culture. Now, because we've started with that, you see that people want to be part of a process like this, right? And on a regular basis, people are then looking at, hey, how do I do things differently? Yeah. And if once we're able to get that embedded, I think the point that you raised about how do you get a culture of creativity going happens, and that will lead to breakthrough innovation as well. Breakthrough innovation,
Lovely.
the other end of the spectrum.
So I think what I hear you very clearly saying is that it is innovation and creativity at the grassroots level.
Interacting with a
Yes.
customer on a digital basis tells you something. Yeah. And you asked me the questions on culture. So it's about the culture, about how do you, not just about, of course, leaders play a huge role in, making that culture happen, but can leaders enable this, right? And then can the culture therefore get the grassroots employee involved? Is I think finally is the, thing that we're looking for as HR folks, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. And as
Thank
a
you.
company, I mean, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me now pose the question to Sonal. In Johnson and Johnson, and I think you're probably one of the industries which has been least affected with this whole personal hygiene challenge. So in this context with business buzzing, how have you been able to kind of help on creativity, and also how, if you could respond on how the tech change has been facilitated in your organization?
Sure. Thank you so much, and hello everyone. So I'll just talk about what's our purpose in Johnson and Johnson, and our purpose is really to blend hard science and ingenuity, so that we can change the trajectory of humanity. And if I take a step back on why is it important, it's important because if we want to drive change in our healthcare segment, we need a sense of urgency. We need a sense of commitment. And something that inspires me a lot that we are reimagining Johnson and Johnson as 132-year-old startup. And it's not an easy journey, right? I mean, it's a big, large enterprise. But how do we embrace and act on best idea? Might not be the perfect idea. How do we become nimble? And how do we ensure that we are using technology to drive change, to create life-changing solutions? And I would talk about, how are we doing it and bringing it to life. So first is really ensuring that our employees blend with the purpose of the organization, which actually clearly calls out innovation as a key enabler of providing life-changing solutions in the healthcare. Second is we call out clearly what are the behaviors we expect our employees and everybody to demonstrate to bring an innovation culture alive. Third is we have tools, which are very systematic and I would say structured in terms of understanding how do you innovate. So while it's a mindset, but we also need a systematic approach to build the context. How will our employees experience it? So that it's not just one group of leaders who are trying to innovate, but everybody in the organization needs to experience it. And finally, is it really delivering a business outcome? And that completes the whole gamut together. And I'll take two examples of what are we doing, which makes me feel very humble. One is we have something called as J Labs. It's a innovation, I would say, global incubator network. And what do we do here is we work with entrepreneurs to help bring their dreams alive, to bring healthcare solutions across the world. So they have access to J&J resources, mentorship, community, and all the power to make their dreams come alive. And we have today worldwide 650 companies worth $40 billion US dollars worth financing who are actually a part of this solutioning through the entrepreneur channel. So we're very proud to have J&J employees working through the J Labs network and helping create life-changing solutions across the world. So that's really at a very high organization level. If I were to then take it back to every day, how does it get embedded? And that's where the tools and processes comes very handy and very alive. So again, calling out, we are guided by a credo, which is really a value document. So in a value document, it's written very simply. How do we have capable leaders? We call it highly capable leaders. How do we courageously try new things, test and learn from mistakes? This is one of the behaviors that we have called out for every single employee in J&J to demonstrate and experience at the same time. So one is about tools and processes. Second is about business context. Third is the why and our purpose is very clear. And then finally, we also understand are our employees experiencing it. So for example, today, 86% of our employees feel that we are committed to paying for a mistake and learning because not every experiment that we do is going to be successful. So are we going to be very careful, but also learn at the same time? And secondly, are we experimenting with new ideas? So both of these questions are 86% of our people feel that we are doing it positively. So that gives us confidence that it's not just something on the table and a paper, but it's also being demonstrated in a very effective manner in the organization as a basic DNA. And I'll just call about, very briefly, in the interest of time, the second question that you asked, Bala, which is about technology. And our industry in FMCG is one of the industry where technology is far ahead in evolution in the way we connect. And especially during the pandemic time, I think it is very important for us to understand how our lives of consumers and customers are getting impacted. Our consumers and customers, and if I talk about customers, is really about distributors who we felt and believe at some stage might not be as technology savvy, which is a little bit of a bias, which is not a reality, but really, really, how do we bring them to technology platforms? How do we work with HCPs? And these are not just large hospitals, but these are also clinics. It is about their comfort. And I think that was a big decision that we made, but we said we are going to go there when they feel comfortable. And we took a step back. And when they felt comfortable, a huge technology platform to connect with them, ensuring that they go through an evolution cycle, and lots of changes, right? Technology will bring centralization to decentralization. It will bring a lot of humanization. It will bring a lot of change in our way of experiencing things. And I personally believe the way our employees were experiencing technology changes and evolution, the same they were demonstrating with our customers and consumers, because the human beings remain the same. And that's where I think they need to go hand in hand. They need to go holistically together. And if we want a digital transformation for our employees, for consumers and customers, they need to experience it in the organization, because they already experience it in their personal lives. So they all need to just get integrated end to end together.
Sure. Thank you, Sonal. I think a couple of points which really attracted or which got me thinking was that you built creativity from a purpose perspective. I think building a larger context to what creativity would mean and what it could deliver. And I interestingly also picked up this word, another C, which probably is the day of the C, which is the courage. I think the courage leads to creativity. Unless and until you are bold enough to go out and talk about what you think is important or what you think is different, it's difficult to probably push the button on creativity. And of course on the tech change and also the whole digital transformation that has to start from within. So very interesting points that have come up to the two questions that we raised. Now let me go to Tanvi, who comes from a very different industry. This is JLL. If I hope I'm right, Tanvi. Sometimes with too many speakers, I could get confused.
No, thank you, Bala. We also do a lot of facility management work. We also do project and development services, which includes constructions, fit outs, etc. And we also do property asset management and capital markets, investment banking sort of work from a real estate standpoint. So very diverse a space that we operate in, even though it's all within the umbrella of real estate. And the kind of employees we have and the challenges of our clients is also very diversified, because on one side we have, we are servicing all the corporates who were going through this pandemic time, right? And had suddenly had to have their entire workplace moving from home. But we also service a lot of financial institutions, banks, etc. So almost 30% of our workforce has never worked from home, even through this entire pandemic. They continue to be on the ground, serving our clients through everything that we've gone through over the last 8 or 9 months. And that put a very interesting challenge for us because, of course, health and safety of the employees was number one. And yet, servicing our clients was equally number one. And how do we balance both of these requirements and service the clients to the best of our ability during these times really became the question for us to answer and address. And I do think technology played a massive role there because we did, luckily for us, we have invested in technology over a much longer period of time. So it wasn't a challenge for us because there were investments that started to actually pay off much more than we expected through this entire pandemic. And those technology investments were something that really held us together. We were able to understand needs of our employees very nicely because we had tools through which we could seek immediate feedback. What are the pain points in terms of what's working, what's not working for them, and how do we provide them more support so that they are able to go on the ground and help and support our clients through these tough times as well. And I think that combination of continuously seeking feedback and then providing solutions to our clients on the ground became very, very important. And what we really believe in is how do we empower the lowest rung of our employees to make decisions that make sense? Because the touch points with clients really lie at that lowest level in the organization. And, as much as we want to, of course, focus on big innovation and have, technology disrupting the industry and come up with cool ways of doing things. But it's that day-to-day touch point that's very important. And how do we empower that last employee to make a difference differently? So there are really four things that I'd like to talk about. First is diverse teams. And I think with any innovation and creativity, unless there are diverse teams working together, we don't necessarily get the value of the innovation and creativity, because those different ideas coming together plays a big role in bringing out more creative solutions. And we believe in the 3G model of diversity, which is gender, generation, and geography as the 3Gs of diversity. So how do we bring groups together, uh, different genders, different geographies, and different generations to come up with solutions for our clients? Because all of these come up with different ideas, different perspectives. So that's one. Second is brainstorming and self-reflection techniques. So we've spent a lot of time and effort in training now just this really simple tool in the hands of that team leader who is catering to facility management of our clients is very, very powerful, because he can sit with his team, think of this, use this tool and think of really creative ways to make a really impactful decision for the client on the ground. So that's something we spent a fair amount of time, resources, and energy on. The third thing is improving office design. And I know many of us are not currently in offices, and that's probably something we miss. But we've been doing a lot of surveys of our employees in terms of what is not working for many. And a lot of feedback that's come back to us is we're missing the office space uh, and the ability to connect with people. So, the office design itself can actually really boost innovation and creativity, because you can have different people coming together. You can create collaboration setups where people come together, different departments, and how they sit next to one another, and how that can influence ideas and create innovation is something that is very powerful. So the physical office space. Now, how do we do that virtually? So what we did is we have continued to have virtual hybrid team meetings, because what we saw in the first 2-3 months is there was a lot of connection and engagement, but it happened in team silos and not necessarily how it would happen in office, where we had different teams interacting with one another. So we started creating opportunities for um, disconnected teams from a pure work standpoint to really come together and talk about common issues and challenges and client problems. And we started getting some very interesting solutions that came out of it. And even just talking about new trends, what's happening in the market, and that brought in a fair amount of new ideas that came together. And the last thing I would say is creating trust in the workplace.
Tanvi, on trust, can I come back to you? Let me
Sure.
hear the others,
Yeah,
because when it comes to empathetic leadership, I think trust plays a critical role. So let me go
absolutely.
to Shantanu, who again is from a similar industry as mine. And here, let me pose the question. I mean, I think we've got enough answers on creativity. Let me pose the question on how you've managed empathetic leadership in your organization, and also more importantly, how, because an auto industry has normally multi generations working. I mean, if you look at Ashok Leyland, we have 3 generations working in the plant. So how have you managed that, Shantanu?
Well, I think we have got a very nice context set by the earlier speakers. And when you ask this question, empathetic leadership, it's especially relevant when we look at the context where we have been going through for last few months, maybe. And I think this has really brought forward the nature of this empathetic leadership traits from leaders across the organizations at different levels. So some of the things which we have really practiced during this COVID period is very simple, but I think it has really been very effective. First of all is that I think we try to reach out to the last man standing, and that's where our communications part played a very important role. So the leaders across from the topmost level to the team leaders at the shop floor, everyone has actually been advised to create smaller networks. And what we have done is that on a regular basis, from the beginning of this COVID scenario, we've been able to connect with the last man standing through series of communications about what the organization is planning to do, number one. Number two, we wanted to also give them that comfort level that in spite of a major restructuring, manpower reductions, job losses, we were quite committed in terms of the security of our people, which is what actually was the top of their mind most of the times. So that is one piece of information we wanted to communicate to them. And it has really acted wonders with us because, I think at the end of the day, when we were really under a crunch situations, we have been able to get the unions at the different sites to come on board. And therefore, they have really come forward to agree on some of the pen sharing formulas, which is typically adjusting their leaves along with some of the periods of absenteeisms. And this was something which was really unheard of because normally the unions are not willing to take something which is not a part of their wage settlement or wage agreement. However, they came forward, they understood what is the purpose and what's the kind of communications we are trying to give it to them, how the company is going through a difficult time, and they have been willingly be a partner of us. So that's one example which comes to my mind, which is very specific to COVID. But other than that, I think probably one of the things which I feel that we do it very, very regularly, I think taking a point from Tanvi, we believe that, I think Schaeffler per se, if you look at our values, couple of them are, it's what mentioning here. One is that we are a technologically very innovative employers. And number two is that for us, passion is also one of the values, but it is a little different than what you normally hear from the passion of the only employees. What we mean by passion is that we are passionate to find out the solutions which customer is looking for. So in this context, I think we have a very focused attempt towards the diversity. And diverse thinking always plays a very critical role in terms of bringing out or elicit some different ideas, which is normally not come to the fore. Now, in this context, it's very important that it's not only the diversity which is matter, but it's also the inclusive behavioral pattern. So every company, of course, you will find the different groups when they meet. Typically, there are few people who are extrovert and they come forward and come out with some of the ideas, and the whole discussion moves around on those ideas. Most of our leaders, we have a special training programs rather, to kind of make them aware that it's very important for us to include each and every members in the team to be a part of that discussions. And it's not only because we wanted to believe in inclusivity, but there is also a business case because the leaders started realizing that there are some people who are typically shy in the meeting. If you can include them, if you can build the trust and credibility with them, then of course we get some ideas which has been very relevant for our customer requirements. So this is also one of the initiatives which we have been typically following for last maybe a couple of years or so, which has helped us in terms of building an empathetic leadership.
Thank you, Shantanu. I think the pillars that you have built on is for building an empathetic leadership. The management or the leadership has shown the way by taking everyone concerned into consideration, and also more importantly, you believe in an inclusive culture to ensure that empathetic leadership is brought about in the organization. I will shift the question also to Srijata at this point in time. And I'd like, in the interest of time, if we can keep it very pointed, the specific question that I have is, in your environment, in a consulting environment, creativity can be a double-edged sword, because you can't be too creative with your client's money. So how have you been able to manage, or how have you been able to moderate this question on creativity. And I posed the same question to Sundar, also post Srijata, because again, there you are dealing with providing creative solutions for a large base of customers. And then I'll probably come to Jayakumar because he's got a wealth of knowledge in terms of managing probably amongst us the largest workforce, the most spread out, and also the most global in the context. So we'll come to you, JK, last. So before that, Srijita and Sundar, please go ahead, Srijita.
Thank you, Bala, and thank you for framing it in a unique way. Like you rightly said, we are in the service of our clients, and that is our business. And as we have gone through our journey of building innovation and creativity, and we've heard a lot of great ideas today on how to do that. One of the things we kind of initiated a couple of years back is co-innovation and co-creation with our clients. Because fundamentally what we want to do is solve for our clients, but not only our clients, but solve for our clients' customers. Solve for the customer experience for our clients. And we started this where our teams were actually working with teams with our clients as a joint team to solve the biggest problems for our clients. And that's where the magic happens. So it was not Accenture's point of view of what the solution needs to be, or, for example, a client's point of view, which might be restricted within an industry. So that was, that's where the magic happened. We also brought in diverse teams, so multi-industry teams. So if we are solving for example, a petrochemical company, we actually brought in our teams from retail on how to create customer experience, because retail is really innovative in creating customer experience. And can we bring that to a petrochemical company, bring that those ideas to our client, and and really create that magic? That's one side. The other aspect of that is how do we bring the best of what is available in the market to our clients? And we have something called the Open Innovation Framework, where a lot of innovation, as we know, is happening within the startups, within new smaller teams, which perhaps don't work for Accenture. But how can we bring that power into co-creation with a client and bring it with what we call as the Open Innovation Framework? So I'll just stop here, Bala, in the interest of time, but that's most probably what really helped us shift our perspective on how do we serve our clients and their customers.
I really like the co-creation bit where you really work closely with the customers. And more importantly, I think you have brought diversity of skills and capabilities, a very different twist in your response. I'm really happy for that. Sundar, you're a learning leader. So please, love to hear from you.
So thanks, Bala. Hello, all. And I'm Sundar. I'll be talking about creativity, but just I'll make it very short. So we started first looking at, what's innovation. So innovation is all about creativity and the ways to implement that. So as the next step towards this, we thought of, how can we be innovative, because we are the technology-driven company. Obviously, we looked at how innovation can play a very vital role in three areas: work, workplace, and workforce. So those are the three areas that we started working with. So when it comes to work, so probably this is not something that we started in the recent past, probably a few years back as a part of our strategic leadership thinking. So we thought, okay, how do we segment the kind of work that we are offering, the services that we are offering to the client? And very interestingly, something, was very striking for us. I'll just put some numbers into perspective. What we realized was 65% of our workforce were contributing to 55% of the organization revenue, but interestingly, 35% the rest 35 were contributing to 45% of the revenue. It's not about the capability of an individual, but actually when it went to the grassroots level, we realized that, the technology adoption and the value-added service at workplace we are offering to the client could be segmented in three ways. One is the work that we are offering to the client, which helps the client to maintain their business as is, using the commoditized or the core technology. However, what we realized was 35% of the workforce were working on the growing age, growing technologies and the niche technologies. Because eventually, when the technology disruption was happening, so was the business, and the customers were looking at extreme automation. So, get more for what they pay. So obviously, we had to bring that kind of a workforce transformation. And the only way we could actually achieve that was create a lot of opportunity for our workforce to get that migration. So on one side, I talked about innovation on the work front, but that was closely linked even to the workforce, because the workforce actually, are supposed to take the work and take it to the next level. So we embraced digital, journey to a greater extent to be the next, the navigator for the client in their digital journey. And we coined a wonderful, triangle: automation through innovation supported by education. So obviously we thought of creating an opportunity for people to learn anytime, anywhere, on any device. So that way we were able to bring in innovation even to the workforce as well. Today I'm very happy to inform you that almost 95% of our workforce are learning along with their regular work. And just imagine the scale: on an average about 20 to 25,000 people getting on to learning with an average time of 40 to 50 minutes. This was absolutely unprecedented. Learning was not something new to Infosys, but we were accustomed to the conventional approach of learning. But this digitization of the learning ecosystem brought a drastic change on the workforce front as well as on the work front. And the last bit about the innovation and creativity on the work part of it, workplace part of it was, I just want to mention that we have one of the largest corporate universities at Mysore. In just a week's time, we were able to very safely move 9,000 of our youngsters who are going through the training program at Mysore safely to their place, at the same time ensuring that the training that they were undergoing was sustainable, was continuous. So today, all the training programs is happening in a virtual way. The entire work is happening in a remote way. We got the customer buying, we got all the technical, the IT infrastructure set up in their doorsteps so that they don't have to really worry about coming to an office. Probably this has led to our thinking process to be changed going forward. Maybe we may have to actually look at a good blend of working on premise and at home as well. But however, all of that was possible because we thought differently. It was not just the business, the technology, but even the mindset has to change to adopt to it. Change management, based on my experience, has been the toughest thing that we need to address, but we were quite successful in addressing all of that. I'll just take a pause here and later I will just add more points.
Thank you. Very interesting in terms of how this whole learning piece, anytime, anywhere, any device learning. I think that's probably the answer that most of us would be seeking in terms of our learning challenges in the current context. So coming to Dr. C. Jayakumar, tell me, Doc, how has been your experience? I think you have probably had the most challenges in terms of safety and health in this current pandemic, and also in your diverse workforce of right from the front end to your senior leadership. So tell me, how has your experience been? And maybe you can draft your answers around how you've been able to build an empathetic leadership in this current context. I think we are probably another 5 to 7 minutes towards close of this session. My next question is going to be on millennials, and let it be a rapid fire. I just want you to give me one sentence response on how do you feel, or how do you prepare yourself for managing the millennials, or the Gen Z as we call it. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Nice to be in the panel. I heard everybody's views. As you rightly said, it was a sudden shock in the month of March. All of a sudden, there was a lockdown, and we have to immediately close down. You imagine around 2.5 lakh workers spread across various projects, more than 10,000 crores of machinery spread across the different places. It was a sudden act, but immediately we acted in pace. We put a very apex committee, direct response team with 2 directors, myself, and 1 or 2 more senior executives, and we formed subcommittees in different regions, different projects, and we've created a structure immediately. And the first few weeks went immediately only into making SOPs, guidelines, taking care of health, safety, how to close down a project, bring the machinery to the safe place, lock it down, and then that was the biggest challenge for the initial. Then once slowly the lockdown went off, as everybody knows, that was a lot of media hype and other thing. Migrant workmen started leaving the place. So we took care of them. We paid the entire salary. We taken care of their food, clothing, shelter, everything we took care. But still, there was some people have to go back. And then the next was how to mobilize them back was the biggest the challenge. And moving towards the other areas of, but we took a lot of sensitive action. What we have done is, one is looked at the insurance part of it, how we can increase the insurance coverage part of it. We hired some doctors who have recently retired in different locations so that in case of emergency, get a beds and other things in hospitals. We blocked some 20-30 rooms in different locations in ginger hotels. In case of many of our people are bachelors, if they get infected, they have to be quarantined. We have to quarantine. We cannot take them. Hospital doesn't accept. They say to do home quarantine. So blocked the ginger hotels. We blocked. And we ensured that whatever happens, we didn't cut any jobs just because of this. It was taken care. Though we had to delay some of the increments and other thing, but in spite of, we paid the performance linked payment this year. So all that we done, and the next force was slowly getting back to work. And touch wood, today we have around 95% of the strength at the project sites, and we are slowly picking up. Coming to the next area of, you are talking about the innovation. The theme of the panel discussion, one broad area was innovation and creativity, next was technology, and third was the empathetic leadership. Very interestingly, when I thought through, our vision statement talks about L&T will be an innovative, entrepreneurial, and empowered team, okay, creating landmarks. And we also talk about creating a culture of caring, trust, and continuous learning. So the entire theme of the whole conference is there inside our vision statement itself. We have a technology conclave done every year across the company, where various different papers are presented. And last time there were more than 19 businesses participated at 20 to 25 locations. We have regional routes, then the zonal round, and then we bring it to the headquarters in Chennai. We do that. So technology in terms of P&M, in terms of workman mobilization, we have an app called Uberization of workers. Any employee is tagged with this Aadhaar card number. So whenever he moves out of the site, when there is a job at particular location, we create a mass SMS. He has to give a missed call, based on which we contact them and get them to the project. So we are connected more than 2 lakh, 3 lakh workers in that. In the area of HR, we have done a whole lot of things, right from AL, ML, and talent acquisition. Digital learning has taken a huge uprise in the last, huge thing. And we have micro learning, etc. That is one thing. Digital learning adoption was wonderful thing which happened, and that is going to become the new normal. Every leadership program we have converted. There are some advantages. 1 week program from Michigan has been converted into 3 weeks program now. There's enough time for people to read cases, internalize it, integrate, and etc. And coming to the empathetic leadership, last 1 minute, we are very sensitive to employees' needs. Certain things I will tell you in terms of PMS we have done is, whenever there's a bell curve, the people who recently joined or the trainees become the scapegoat. They will be pushed to the below. So we moved them separate. They'll have a separate bell curve that will not be brought inside. We found that in the data analytics, we found where people ladies come back from maternity leave. Last 7-8 months, they are not in the job. So they are pushed back. It was brought in as a policy. If a lady comes back from maternity leave, her rating should be same as the last year or higher. You cannot reduce the rating. So we are very, very sensitive to this. We put ourselves in the other people's place and do that. We are not the best paymasters, but our retention rates are very high. Attrition is hardly 5 to 6%. And people have completed 25. Our long service starts for 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30, 35. I have completed 32 years in this organization, a great organization. Thank you, Bala, for this opportunity. Nice.
Not at all. A pleasure always talking to you, JK. I think in terms of defining empathetic leadership, you have demonstrated as an organization the way forward. And I've also heard very, very interesting stories about the Tata Group and the Titan in terms of empathetic leadership, because they demonstrated. It's not talked about. It's probably experienced and felt in in many large corporations, because empathetic leadership is something what the leadership defines and walks the talk, not in terms of vision statements or not in terms of definitive statements. It is how we behave. Very interesting dialogues from various walks of the industry. The time has been really very short. So what I will now ask or seek of the panel is your one-line response to how do you manage the Gen Z. So Raj, we can start with you.
I think it's about one continuum, I would say, from respecting differences to celebrating differences.
Brilliant.
Right? I think people are different. It's generation is just one element of a difference that is there. And I think it's about having enough instruments and opportunity for people to be able to understand first and respect those differences and celebrate those. And once you're able to do that, I think people get along. Ultimately, people like to emote and affiliate with each other.
Sure.
And I think today we use technology to do it very well. And I think we can do it.
Respecting differences, I think it's a very interesting take.
And to celebrate it as well.
Yeah. Sonal?
Yeah, I would say, at Johnson & Johnson, we particularly believe that multi-generation workforce is extremely important, not just for business outcomes, but also to drive an innovative culture. And that really drives the business outcomes. And just as one example, we have employee resource group called Generation Now. We call them Gen Now. And they stand on 3 pillars.
Tanvi.
Hi, Bala. So what I would say is the most important thing in good leadership is truly caring. And I think that's the approach that we are taking with the Gen Zs, understanding their world, understanding where they're coming from, truly caring about who they are and how they will lead is really what we are trying to focus on.
Understanding and truly caring. Interesting. Thank you. Santanu?
So, Bala, for us, it's more like respecting the differences and offering the space to experiment. That's what we tend to do in our organizations.
Brilliant. Thank you. Srijata?
Yes, I think it's important to focus on building a culture that is embedded in open communication and trust, and particularly focus on creating experiences that are grounded in care for our people and concern for their environment. And that's where, that's how we create a truly inclusive organization, across the multi-dimensions.
Lovely. Interesting words that are coming up. The common thread that I can see is accept the reality, work with the reality, and more important, be caring and concerning for those. Sundar?
Trust, communication, opportunities, empowerment, and have the voice of youth platform created. And most importantly, assure them that we have tolerance for their failure, because the failure becomes the stepping stone for their further success. I think this is something that we are adopting.
That's a brilliant one to finish in terms of tolerance to failure. I think that's a very powerful communication. JK?
The foremost is provide them challenging assignments, stretched assignments, continuous learning opportunities, and recognize them when they do a good work.
Sure. Thank you so much. I really have learned a lot, and some very interesting concepts that have come up, especially the rose, bud, and thorn. I think these are all very interesting learnings for all of us, and I'm sure as we meet as HR professionals every day and speak to each other, we learn from each other. I think the common theme, if I were to sum up this whole conversation on creating an organization which is digital as well as which is very considerate, I think 2 or 3 things stand out. One is it has to be inclusive. Get down to the grassroots, get down to your larger stakeholder network, get them to talk, get them to engage with each other. So an all-inclusive culture is very important. The second one is build trust, build that sense of confidence, both in your employees and in your stakeholder network, to ensure that you are able to sustain your organization, you're able to sustain your business going forward. And most importantly, the last one, if I were to sum up, technology is here to stay. Organizations will have to learn to embrace technology. And the only way to do it is organizations start to demonstrate and organizations start to behave digitally in terms of their processes, in terms of their procedures, and in terms of their policies. I think that's the only way that tech change can be enabled and forced in a manner that everyone adopts. So I take this opportunity to sincerely thank each and every one of you present here for the wonderful learnings and for all the wonderful thoughts, ideas, and very, very different perspectives that you have been brought. It's been a very, very enriching and a very, very learning experience for me.